Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's ISE webinar. My name is Steve Ishwood, Joint Chief Executive responsible for knowledge and insights, and I'll be acting as sort of host and compere for today's session. I've got a really interesting session today brought to you with one of our partners, Amberjack. We'll be discussing how you engage with early talent before day one. We've got a real interesting range of speakers. Just before we get into the content, a reminder about how our webinars work, just in case you haven't joined one before. We like to make them as interactive as possible, so please do use the chat. If you've got any questions for the panelists, pop them in the Q&A. We may answer some of them as we go along. We may have some time at the end to cover them. If not, we'll be able to come back to you after the webinar, so please do interact with the tools on your screen. We are also recording this, so you'll get a link to the recording, so you'll be able to both go back to anything that you want to recap, but also so you can share the love amongst your colleagues. We like to get our learning sessions out to as many people as possible. So I think that's enough from me. Let's get started with the session. As always, really great. Thank you very much to Amberjack. Without the support of organisations like yourself, we really couldn't deliver anything near like either the quality or the volume of content that we do. So thanks for that. In case I forget to say it later, Jenny, over to you.
Thanks, Stephen. Thank you very much to the ISE for partnering with us on this as well. And many thanks for joining today to talk about, as Stephen said, a very hot topic in our world, particularly at this time of year, the art of engaging early talent post-offer and pre-day one. How much do they want? What do they want? In what format? Hopefully we're going to try and uncover all of this today so that you can leave with some really tangible actions with easy to implement solutions in a particularly cost-conscious environment that we are all living in. So we hosted a building loyalty and early talent breakfast last week, and I was just reflecting on some of the conversations that we had and which part of the journey is really most critical. And arguably, I think the time pre-joining is absolutely essential to building loyalty, and truly, I really believe sets the tone for the rest of their career journey with you. They've worked really hard to get the offer that they deserve, and it's now time to ensure that they are set up for success and have all that they need to be the best they can be when they join you on day one. It's also time for managers to set up managers for success. And as we hear really frequently, they can really make or break a program. I think particularly in the 5-generational workforce that we now have, managers need to really understand how this generation are communicating, their behaviours, their expectations, so that they can really provide the right scaffolding for the next generation of talent to really thrive. And at Amberjack, we really believe that preparing the next generation to join the world of work is absolutely critical. We need them to break boundaries. We need them to challenge thinking. So we really need to set everyone up for success. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank you for coming today, and thanks to the ISE for supporting the webinar. I'm delighted to be joined by Ellie Simpson, co-founder at 60, who we've been working really closely with as our overall purpose really strongly aligns. And also Rachel Hollinger, Early Careers Manager at Scottish Power, and one of our brilliant clients who we've been working with closely on some pre-boarding initiatives. Thank you so much for joining and supporting the discussion, and we'll hear from Ellie and Rachel a little later on in the webinar. So why are we all here? Many of you who are responsible for attracting early talent. I hope most of you are coming to the end of an incredibly busy autumn and spring. And I think the reality is, as I was sharing the other day, the summer is going to be a very busy one too. I think following record numbers of applications, thanks to AI and obviously the significant economic uncertainty that we're all facing into, there will no doubt be record numbers of reneges. And this won't be the only issue that I think that employers are facing as they prepare to onboard early talent later on this year. Unfortunately, early confidence of early talent is really low. Recent data from Bright Network showed that only 53% of early talent are really confident in securing a role. The mental health of our young people is really in quite a state of crisis. A recent Deloitte report that I was reading showed that only 52% of Gen Z rated their mental well-being as good or very good. and 40% of Gen Z reported feeling stressed or anxious most of the time. With that, imposter syndrome is most prevalent within the 20 to 25 age group, with 82% saying that they're suffering from imposter syndrome much of the time. And this is a generation that are feeling pretty anxious and underprepared. I think, years of study, it seems, hasn't really prepared them and given them the confidence to step into employment. Don't worry, I will bring some more positive news soon. And for those of you who particularly enjoy a book recommendation, The Coddling of the American Mind by Jonathan Haidt explains why some of this is the case. And social media, parenting styles. Just before the start of this conference, we were talking about start of this webinar, sorry, Stephen and I were talking about delayed adulthood, constant comparison, the list goes on and on. But in the meantime, I think there is good news. This is a generation that hugely value learning and development. There was, again, back to the Deloitte 2025 Gen Z survey, they rank learning and development at number 3 behind work-life balance and opportunities to progress. So it is really high on their agenda, and they do hugely value the support in this space. And we therefore need to ensure that, the months we spend hiring, allow them to feel engaged and confident to join on. We support them in a way that allows them to feel engaged and confident to join on day one. And this does also include, really critically, the training of internal staff to support this transition too. We need to provide the tools they need to succeed and connect with our new cohorts in a way that really resonates with them. That we need to understand that they do hugely value mentoring, but they don't like being micromanaged, as an example. And we need to ensure that our managers are really equipped with the right tools and support in the areas that we know that they really struggle in. If we do, I feel that we can really build engagement and loyalty so that early talent can join and really thrive when they join us. So I'm going to move on and look at the issues that we're seeing, what support next gen talent really want, what we can do, and the results of taking that action. And I'll bring Ellie and Rachel in to talk about some of that shortly. So I thought before we look at what we can do to actually support early talent, we'd just spend a few minutes looking at some of the issues that we're seeing. Many of these will be familiar to most of you. There are significant challenges. The first is we've got a record number of applications. We've been seeing this across the season, 140 for every role. I'm sure you've all witnessed that in the autumn and spring that we've just had, and levels of work have been, sky high. Why? Because Gen AI is creating a really uncertain future, but one which allows them to rapidly apply to hundreds of roles really quickly. There's uncertainty about which roles will even exist in 5 to 10 years' time, which skills are most important, and how they can develop these. Things are really uncertain at the moment, and students joining the workforce, I think, need to be more resilient and agile than ever before to deal with the change and ambiguity that's coming ahead of them. But what we're seeing at the moment in the education space is that they're not really being taught, and they're not getting the exposure to build that resilience and to build that level of agility and confidence that we need them to have in the workplace. And then, due to the record number of applications and uncertainty, catfishing has become a thing. I don't know if many of you have heard of the term catfishing, totally ghosting your future employer and just not showing up on day one with no communication. So what they're feeling is, if the engagement post offer hasn't been good enough, I won't bother to notify you, but I just won't show up on day one. So that's something that we're seeing huge amounts of. And then linked to this, renege rates, I'm sure, are going to see record highs in 2025, purely due to the volume of applications that students have been making. And then we get to the gaps between the skills the students have when they're at school or uni and what's really needed in the workplace. According to recent Bright Network research, students rank resilience as 10th, but employers rank it as 2nd after passion for business. So there's clearly a big disconnect here with the need for resilience in the workplace. And then 46% have concerns around the lack of resilience of their early talent. So this is a kind of culture of over promotion and reward. They've been used to being promoted every year while they've gone through school. Even if you fail your exams, you still are allowed to progress to the next year, and you're constantly getting that feedback and reward. Lack of opportunity to fail isn't setting up our young people for success. So we really need to think about how we can provide opportunities on campus and in this post-offer phase so that our early talent cohorts understand how to build resilience, and what strategies they can adopt when they face into challenging situations. We run particular workshops around resilience, looking at how they can support themselves to build strategies to cope with challenges that they face into, to cope with failure. What can they do? How can they overcome that? How can they step up and show that they do have the resilience that they need? And then communication is also a gap. And we'll hear from our Gen Z community shortly about the importance of this. But 54% are not meeting expectations in this area. So again, what can we be doing before they join to really build confidence in this space? This is perhaps one of the biggest areas that I feel has been impacted in recent years. The pandemic, the explosion of social media. It means that no one really talks on the phone anymore. Communications in emojis, it's in likes. And, while that's okay within the Gen Z community, when, one student is talking to another, that's fine. But when we start to talk about this as the way that they're communicating in the workplace, I think early talent really need to know and understand how to communicate more effectively across the 5 generations that we're working in, so that it's professional, it's effective, it's efficient, and they're building that personal brand that they want to be known for. And then we've got stereotypes that have developed around, and the key thing is here that this is just the next generation. Again, Ellie and I were talking about this a moment ago. Another book recommendation here is Bobby Duffy's Generations. We were lucky enough to hear from him at the recent ISE development conference. And I think the point here is this is just a generation like any other. And the traits of each newest generation that are negative, are emphasized by the next generation above. They're lazy, or they don't want to progress, or they want to leave, 9 to 5. They don't want to go the extra mile. Every next generation has been saying that about the newest generation coming up. But the reality is that we need to embrace the next generation of leaders. We need to develop them so that our organisations continue to innovate and move forward. So that's some of the issues that we're seeing, which I thought would be helpful to kind of just bring to our attention. And so what can we do? We very much need to adopt a multifaceted approach, and I won't go into too much detail. I'm going to pass over to Ellie shortly to bring this to life. But different approaches will obviously appeal and resonate with different people. And it's in the creation of this inclusive onboarding and pre-boarding strategy that will get the most success. So reducing reneges and creating that cohort connection through buddies and phone calls and emails. We've been seeing that for some time, going back 10, 15 years. We've always been doing that, allocating a buddy, sending out newsletters, creating that cohort connection. But also to really take your engagement to the next level, it's clear that we need to be doing more. We need to be offering upskilling in key areas. We need to be offering in-person events, online workshops, development playlists in areas like where we've touched on that they need most support: resilience, communication, business etiquette, and critically training line managers on how to support the next generation of talent that are joining. So I'm going to play a short video now so that we can hear from a few of our next gen community on where they need support and what they'd like to receive from employers. So hopefully that will bring some of what we've been sharing just now to life a bit more. Hopefully this is going to work from a sound and tech point of view.
I think it would be newsletters or in-person like workshops, because they're quite useful when you actually get to see someone face to face and have that feel of the environment that you'd possibly be going into in the future.
Having a buddy, because I know that I'm also someone who needs that reassurance from somebody to feel like, okay, this, you know, I can ask this person anything. They're not going to be like, this silly question.
I think the business etiquette would be quite good. So understand, familiarise yourself with the words. And also I was thinking about like the digital side of things. So understanding how to work the technology that we're going to be using, because obviously it's not the same as Word documents at uni. So that sort of familiarisation of it.
I was going to say something along the lines of personal brand. I think when you go into a company, it can be, even if it's a small company, I don't want to feel like I've lost a part of myself. I still want to be able to, you know, be how I am now on this camera. I don't want to feel like I need to hide my personality.
I think it would be the networking and the digital like side of things.
Yeah, I think I would probably say networking too. I think, again, just being able to put a name to the face sometimes, I think is very helpful.
I think it's just trying and trying again. Like, even if you get knocked down, just like, okay, well, small setback, try harder, like work harder.
You know, sometimes I definitely have days where I think, oh, I can't do it, don't want to go in today. But, you know, having that like support network around you, like, come on, Roman, go to uni, do this, do that. And then you do it. And then when I graduated, I'm doing masters now. It was like, wow, you know what? I actually did do it. I did struggle, but I did it. And I'm so happy that I did, because I wouldn't be the person I am today if I didn't.
I would say more by family and friends pushing me to do better and do well. I've had in the past teachers who have said, you wouldn't be able to get into uni, or you wouldn't be able to do this, you wouldn't be able to do that. But I've always had friends and family, which I'm lucky to have around me, who've said, no, try, you can do it. And then I'm here now, so we're getting somewhere.
I think friends and family as well. I think there's no one that knows you better than your family, to be honest.
I found out about the Next Gen event through the uni, so that was quite helpful. Although they don't really have a lot of things like that posted up, so I think it's kind of a contrast. So like sometimes there's good things, but it's occasional.
Yeah, I would probably say that a lot of the opportunities and jobs are a lot more, well, in my uni are catered for business side. So, you know, I'm looking through opportunities and I think, well, that sounds interesting, but that's not something I want to do. And I think, oh, not this, not that. And it does knock your resilience down. So I think having something maybe like in folders, like, you know, something for psychology or something for business, something for economics, I think, like, just post everything on there. Like, don't make me go to so many websites, just put everything in one folder.
Not necessarily, but it's nice to sort of make a connection beforehand. But I just think it doesn't necessarily matter, but it would be nice.
Yeah, for me, I would definitely benefit from meeting everyone before. Just a chance to ask them, you know, what's your story? How did you end up here? Just, I think something from that in a conversation, you can take away so much. And I think you can feel like, you know, you are a part of the company as well. It just makes you feel less alone.
Just to be in communication.
And I would probably say communication as well, but also for me, like, it's hard to describe. Like, I feel I would want an employer who doesn't feel like an employer, if that makes sense. I don't want to see them as someone like, oh my God, you're so powerful, you're so superior. I can't necessarily do that. I just want someone to be able to ask questions that I'm not gonna be like, oh yeah, Roman's a bit like this or Roman's a bit like that. I don't want that. Yeah, definitely the human skills. I think regardless of what job you go into, you're gonna need to communicate with someone somehow, whether that be through emails, through talking. I think communication is so fundamental to us. And I think being able to ask the right questions, know how to deal with someone if they're like, I don't like what you've just said there. Like, there are definitely ways around that. And I think if we can learn those skills now in early years, then we're set up for life.
Great, thanks to all the Gen Z panelists who supported that video. I really enjoyed talking to them all, and hope you found those sound bites useful. I think what struck me the most is how we mustn't really underestimate how big the transition from school or university into the workplace is, and how uncertain they feel about this transition. I think, confidence is low. They do feel uncertain. They do have imposter syndrome. I know Ellie's going to come on and talk about that uncertainty piece. Some questions are really small, some are much bigger, but regardless, I think it's really critical to provide that safe space and time to address as many of them as possible before they join, so that they can join with that increased confidence and competence that their line managers are expecting them to have and show up with. And I think the other thing is, it's often the uncertainty that fuels the anxiety and the imposter syndrome, and then that leads to the reneges and the catfishing. So it is really critical to use this time to communicate, to engage, to encourage, and to make it less scary. I think Rumen there really, make it a normal place, a human place to go and be and interact with people and meet people and see people like them. And then they will really bring their whole self to the workplace and thrive. So I'm going to hand over to Ellie at 60 now to share how we can implement some of these solutions in a bit more detail.
Super, great. Thank you very much, Jenny. So I'm here to talk about how we actually engage next generation talent. And I guess to answer that, we need to start by understanding where this generation is at. So this is exactly kind of what Jenny touched on previously. This generation aren't just looking for a job. They're looking for belonging. They're looking to know that their work will make a real difference. And they're actively seeking support to grow. And as we've kind of touched on, they're also facing more barriers than ever with anxiety, imposter feelings, and that real kind of deep uncertainty about the future. And personally, I totally get it, because I felt exactly the same too when I kind of started out as an intern and also as a graduate. I had no pre-boarding support at all. And I vividly remember thinking, have I even actually got a job here? Like, is that offer even still kind of on the table? And during that period of my life, I also remember feeling chronically underprepared with those kind of workplace and those kind of human skills too that we have just touched on, like how to write an email or have a difficult conversation. Like, I very much had the academics, but not necessarily the confidence. So everything that we have just kind of echoed earlier. And genuinely, throughout that period, I couldn't have felt less engaged. So how do we flip the script for your early talent? Well, we've spent the last few years helping leading employers rethink about how they engage next generation talent during this pre-boarding phase. And from all the work that we've done, we've developed a really simple, tried and tested framework that simply just works. So next slide, please, Jenny. So essentially, that is literally 3 steps. So engage, pre-skill, and then connect. So really, when you think about your pre-boarding journey, you really want to make sure you're including these 3 ingredients to genuinely engage the next generation of talent, because ultimately it encompasses everything that they're looking for, from personal support all the way through to reducing that uncertainty. And really, when you think about it from your kind of employer perspective as well, it really does position you as the employer of choice. If you're the one that's proactively communicating and supporting their development and making the effort to actually connect with them prior to day one, and other employers aren't, who do you think they'll show up for on day one? And that's going to be you, ultimately. It sets you apart, and it shows that you really do value and you care for each candidate on a personal level before they've even joined the business. And therefore, once they join, they're probably going to continue to receive that same level of support and care, and therefore you should be the employer that they actually want to join. So I'm going to walk you through this framework today, and I'll show you how we applied it with Anglian Water to achieve 100% engagement, no reneges, and a 30% increase in speed to productivity. And that framework is absolutely something that's really tangible, and it's something that you can kind of take away and actually apply to your programs. So definitely kind of have a think about each of those key areas as I kind of talk through each. But before I actually dive into that, I just wanted to mention one word, and that word is uncertainty. So if you can only do one thing during this whole pre-boarding phase to maximize engagement, make it this, and it is to reduce uncertainty. Because that feeling of uncertainty, of unknown, causes real psychological stress. Like, think about it in our kind of day-to-day lives. When there's lots of unknown things in my day, that makes me feel worried and anxious. So when kind of early talent are entering a brand new world of work, especially those potentially from disadvantaged backgrounds who haven't kind of seen what this actual workplace and this world looks like before, it can be particularly big. And that uncertainty really chips away at personal confidence before they've even had the chance to step through the door. So everything you do during pre-boarding, do it with that in mind, reducing uncertainty. And that's why this framework works so well, because through a series of simple touch points from offer, or kind of from even now time, through to day one, you're sending a really clear message that you're not alone, you're not underprepared, and you've absolutely got this, and we can't wait for you to join. So that's how you genuinely do drive engagement through that kind of pre-boarding phase. So if we have a look at engagement, so engaging candidates, essentially this is all about engaging your next gen talent in your culture, in your EVP, in your brand, your mission, your values. Essentially everything there is to do with who you are as a company. And the aim of the game here is to really get early talent bought into you, into who you are, and to really feel connected to you guys as a company, and really to make them feel excited about joining and contributing to your really exciting projects that you've got going on. And at Anglian Water, we did this through a series of short videos from senior leaders, welcoming them and also introducing them to the company's missions and values. And we also had some short videos from existing early talent too. So things like, what do you wish you'd known about the company prior to day one? What surprised you in your first month? Or what's one piece of advice that you would give? And these types of really authentic videos and content, it's not only super scalable, so it's actually really easy to deliver to large cohorts without taking up too much time from a senior leader perspective. It's also really authentic. It's not corporate framed messaging that they'd have seen kind of online during your recruitment process. It's real people sharing really real stories and real lived experiences. And essentially that's what makes it valuable and makes it really engaging for next generation talent, because they can see how their colleagues are coming across, what they're wearing, what tips they're giving to really take on board and to reduce that uncertainty. And like I said, the result of this for Anglian Water was we had 100% engagement before day one. Renege rates dropped to 0. And as somebody said, I really liked getting to know more. It really helped me to see and imagine my future here. Because there's that whole piece around, if you can't see it, you can't be it. So it really is about showing them who, they could kind of grow into become. So that's kind of the engage step. And then next up is pre-skilling. So essentially, this is all about providing some basic workplace fundamentals before day one, so that early talent don't arrive on day one feeling like they absolutely know nothing. It's about building that confidence in them, that they know what they're doing and that they are capable and that they do have that baseline skill level. And it really does help to quieten some of those imposter feelings that we touched on earlier, because they actually feel equipped and ready. Because as we mentioned, kind of the traditional academia and education, you don't get taught any of these kind of fundamental skills. I certainly didn't at school and at university. So just providing that baseline levels the playing field and just kind of builds that confidence. Now, obviously, totally recognise it's their summer and they've probably got loads of fun plans. So don't hit them with a full course or dictate too much of their time. But you can offer short optional modules like how to network and introduce yourself, personal brand, how to write an email, what commercial awareness means. All of this stuff that they've probably not ever thought about before. And it certainly wasn't something I'd ever thought about before before I kind of started work. And we kind of have our pre-made kind of micro-learning library for all of this stuff, so making it really easy to implement. But if you're looking for something free that you could kind of implement quite easily this summer, you quite literally could compile a list of really helpful resources from YouTube, from blogs, from podcasts in almost like a PDF and send that out as part of your kind of pre-boarding information pack. And even things like that will go a really long way. And with Anglian Water, we used our pre-made kind of power skills mobile playlists, which is all about kind of leveling the playing field and building that baseline of workplace readiness. And we saw amazing results with that. We saw a 20% increase speed to productivity and also a 20% increase in confidence as well across the board. And as somebody said, spectacular. It really kind of helped them to felt that they already knew something and really did make all the difference when they were stepping through the door on day one. And again, here it's about reducing that uncertainty. I vividly remember thinking, I know there's a lot that I don't know, but I don't know what I don't know. So where do I even start with trying to figure out what that looks like? So providing some guidance really does help to reduce that uncertainty. And then finally, connect. So this is all about creating an early talent community and really helping them to realize that they're not alone, but also two, reducing uncertainty, as I've kind of said throughout. And that's really because they know who's going to be turning up on day one with them, and knowing that there's going to be a friendly face there. And this generation really is craving connection and craving knowing different people and building those relationships, but it can be so hard to do it on your own and to make it happen themselves. It's something you've absolutely got to help them with and facilitate. So with Anglian Water, they set up a group chat prior to joining that incoming cohort could connect and get to know one another with. And again, that's something that you could really easily do on LinkedIn or WhatsApp or on any other kind of platform like that. And kind of, again, with Anglian Water, they saw multiple graduates said that they really felt that they belonged and they were part of the organisation before day one. And like I said, although you can do kind of those pre-made group chats, you can run face-to-face events. We kind of do lots of different escape rooms. Amberjack, they run really interesting webinars. You can obviously do more in-person events. You've got your buddies as well you can kind of set up. So there's lots of different ways that you can implement this connect element, but it's about just allowing and facilitating the incoming cohort to connect with one another. So that's kind of the framework in a really quick overview, but it's definitely something for you guys to take away and really have a think about how you can kind of do that from your side, kind of going forward before day one to help you reduce reneges and really set your talent up for success and help them to genuinely engage in your brand. So my kind of final wrap-up points are: make sure you touch on each of those elements in the framework. Keep it really human, keep it bite-sized, authentic, and on demand. And make sure you're regularly communicating with regular touch points. And finally, with everything you're doing, just ask yourself the one question: is this reducing uncertainty? And if the answer is yes, then you are absolutely doing something right. And I think that's my parting advice for you. Thank you very much, Jenny. Back to you.
Thanks, Ellie. Really useful. I think, with all of this, it's about not doing one thing, but seeing what works for different people at different times in their journey, and absolutely reducing that uncertainty, making the workplace feel a bit more human, and that they're able to engage and really connect with. So thanks for bringing that to life. I think, Rachel, I'll bring you in at this point to talk about, I know you've implemented lots of different touch points throughout the pre-boarding journey for your early talent. So perhaps we could just hear from you as to what you've been doing and how that's worked and some of the results that you've seen.
Sure. Yep. So when I first came into Scottish Power, which was in 2022, we didn't have anyone looking after kind of any of our trainee programs at that point, and also obviously just came out of COVID as well. So I think the first thing that I actually did was going out to speak to all of our trainees and all of our graduates in the business to understand what their experience had been like, but in an ideal world, what would they have wanted to happen? And that's kind of what started this whole pre-boarding journey with ourselves. So similar to kind of what both of you have said earlier, like our Ellie, your experience from getting that offer to some people starting, they didn't know if the offer still existed because they hadn't heard from us. Now, on our side, contracts were signed and we thought everything's gone ahead and, our processes are done. But from that candidate's perspective, there obviously was a lot of uncertainty. And that's what kind of triggered, I suppose, the first part of our journey. Which is engaging with them from point of offer. So our assessment periods are probably quite similar to everybody else's, where we typically wrap up recruitment round about February, March time. And then obviously the graduates won't start with us until September. So we've got that 6-month point where they will have applied for different jobs. They'll still be going through recruitment processes with other people. So how do we ensure that these candidates definitely want to come to Scottish Power? And part of that was looking at what our previous graduates didn't have and what they would have liked, but also just listening to other people in the business to understand what their experiences were like and how we could enhance them. So we essentially, the kind of aim of it was to keep them engaged with Scottish Power from day one, but also to make them feel that sense of belonging, which I think Jenny and Ellie have both mentioned there. We want them to feel like they belong to the organisation from the minute that they're given a contract, not just from the minute that they start with us. So the first kind of part in our pre-boarding process is all of them will receive an offer letter from the early careers recruitment team before they receive their contracts. And that just kind of highlights everything that happened at Assessment Centre will be directly from someone that they've met at the Assessment Centre as well. And then that essentially triggers a congratulations gift that we send out to all of the new offers. So just letterbox gifts that get posted out to each of the individuals. We have cards signed by our different business CEOs and some kind of small gifts in them like beanie hats, coffee pods, that kind of thing. Nothing extravagant, but something just as a touch point to say we're happy that you're on board with us now. Once those gifts have all been triggered, within sort of 4 weeks of that offer going out, so just in the kind of second month, they'll then receive an email from myself inviting them all to basically be included in a closed LinkedIn group where we will then share information about what's going to happen on the kind of lead up to them joining the organisation. But equally, we also have our current graduates in that closed LinkedIn group who will then introduce themselves, encourage others to talk in it, and be there to answer any questions that people have. Because some of the things that probably as a kind of people team we thought were important were things like what are their placements going to look like and what kind of work are they going to be involved in from day one. The things that the graduates were concerned about coming in was what do I wear on day one and who do I go and speak to when I first come in and how do I actually get into the building if I don't have a pass, and all of these things that experienced hires just take for granted, and you would walk into a new organisation and wouldn't think twice about it. But when it's someone coming directly from education, they haven't necessarily considered all of those types of things, and even things like where do I go for lunch, or is there a fridge that I can put my lunch in each day, which they don't really necessarily want to ask the managers that they're going to be coming in and being aligned against. But if they are able to ask current graduates, people that are on their peer level, they feel a bit more comfortable doing that. So that's the kind of first stages in our kind of pre-boarding process. what we implemented then last year was we kind of partnered with Amberjack to deliver some pre-boarding development sessions, which went down really well in the business. So I think they started in May last year, and we ran a couple of different dates for each of the sessions. So we done some in May and some in July, just to break it up. Aligned them to some of the kind of development program or development subjects, I suppose, that they're going to get across their graduate program, and things that would align with their onboarding week as well. So we're trying to get away from some of the more formal phrases like induction and things like that, because really it is about their experience of being welcomed into the organisation. It's not the kind of corporate typical policies type thing that you would expect to happen in the kind of first couple of weeks. So we partnered up with Amberjack on that, and those sessions were delivered virtually, which were received really well from all of the candidates actually. And from kind of some of that activity last year, we've seen a massive drop in our renege rate. So the year that I first joined, so that would have been kind of 2022, we were sitting up at about 38% reneges, which was really high and probably quite similar to quite a lot of people around about that time. But last year we managed to drop that by 20%, so we were only sitting at 18% from the whole campaign, which over the course of 6 months we know that we're going to lose some of our candidates. We are a massive engineering employer in Scotland, but there are also many of them. So we know that we're going to lose a few people, but if we can reduce the number of people that are having to come through our processes, that's the end goal for us. The other part of it, I suppose, is that for the first time in 6 years, we've had nobody leave the graduate programme in the first or in their first year. Touch wood, because we're still within that first year. But over the past few years, there have been kind of 2 to 3 people that have been dropping out of the programme, which again, you would expect with the volumes that we're recruiting. But this year so far, we've not received any of that. And I do think a big part of it is aligned to the fact that from the outset of their offer, almost there has been a recurring theme the whole way through, is that we care about their development. And every single session that we've ran has aligned to what happened in pre-boarding, to what happened in onboarding, to now what's actually happening on their training programme as well. So there's a recurrent theme the whole way through. And then on the other side of that, the managers have said that they feel like their graduates are much more prepared for kind of day-to-day work, because again, probably graduates coming out of university, they're not fully work ready to the extent that the business would expect them to be. And don't get me wrong, I do think that there's probably a bit of an internal piece that probably a lot of organisations need to do to help managers understand what their expectations should be of graduates coming through. But with running these sessions last year, one of the development sessions we ran was transition to working life, and the graduates gave really, really positive feedback on that session with Amberjack, just because they said that they did feel like it really set them up for success coming through. The other really nice thing that it did do was allow the graduates to meet one another, although it was on Teams, meet each other and see someone's face before they actually got into the business on day one. We do also do an in-person event, but again, kind of as Jenny said, it's summer, it's their last summer to really enjoy themselves. We don't want them to be having to come to us to do 10 different things over the course of the summer. Everything we do is voluntary, but we tend to get a really high uptake at all of our events, just because people are excited about getting started, and we want them to feel like they're part of the organisation before they even get into us. So some of the other kind of ad hoc things we do, we have our CEOs either come to those big welcome events in person or film videos that we can then send out and share on LinkedIn. We share videos of our current graduates, kind of similar to what Ellie was talking about their experiences. We share content of graduate events that happen across the course of the year, and a lot of it is just kind of giving them information, but it's to make them feel that sense that they're an employee of Scottish Power, and it's a really exciting time to join. And I suppose from just doing all of those different types of things, it probably means that we're being really inclusive, because there's options to join things virtually, there's options to just read things if you want to do that, there's options to engage online, but there's also options to engage in person. So we're trying to make sure that, because of the diversity of the population that we're bringing through, and also the diversity of our roles, that people are going to be able to communicate with one another in the way that's comfortable for them, and not just the way that's going to work for us too. So it's been a couple of years in the making, but we feel like we've got the pre-boarding process down now, and hopefully just enhance this year with bringing Ellie and 60 on board to enhance that process for us. But yeah, been really positive so far for us.
Thanks so much, Rachel. So much of what you said, I think, kind of resonates, and you know, there isn't a magic bullet, is there? It's the layering and providing of different opportunities for different people to engage with, and something will resonate with someone more than it does with someone else. But holistically, you're kind of able to, you've got a great pre-boarding strategy that's obviously delivered those fantastic results. So thank you so much for sharing.
No problem.
So just to wrap up, and then I think we've got some questions, some time for questions. You know, I think learning and development is really highly valued by this generation, and clearly human skills, especially in the world of Gen AI that we're all kind of living in and getting used to living in, these are going to be absolutely essential for success. And I think don't be afraid of, you know, yes, they have, this is their last summer before they go into the world of work, but don't be afraid of putting stuff out there, like Rachel said, that's optional. You know, they don't have to come, but actually we're finding that more often than not, they do turn up, they do want to engage, and they are excited to get started. And the more that you can support them to feel less uncertain, the more they'll be ready to join and engage on day one and really impress their line managers and so on. It'll just breed success. So yeah, like I've said, a multi-pronged pre-boarding strategy is essential in such an uncertain world. Offer different things for different people, and then, you know, don't forget the line managers and the program sponsors. You know, you can do everything in the world for your graduates and early talent coming in. Got to make sure that your line managers are also engaged and that you've got the right people managing this group of talent coming in. It's not like managing an experienced hire. They do have different requirements, and it's important to invest in the training for the line managers continuously, not just a one-off 1 hour right at the beginning of the program and then leave them to it, but create communities of practice, get them to communicate and learn from each other. All really, really valuable and essential to creating a successful journey for our young talent. So I'll leave it there. Obviously, if you've got any questions, please do share them in the chat. And if you've got anything to follow up with, I know we'd be delighted to hear from anyone that has any follow-up questions after the session. We'll be sharing a recording and the deck. So yeah, over to you, Stephen. I don't know if there are any questions in the chat.
Yeah, we've got a couple already. Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, Ellie. Thanks, Rachel. Really interesting session there. It's funny how technology has changed just the way this whole thing operates over the years. When you add on actually what is different for young people coming through. I was at a report launched by the OECD this morning, talking about a whole range of things I won't go into, but actually that point around, there is just a lot less. There are fewer Saturday jobs out there, you know, fewer part-time work for people. So I think there's something about business expectations to manage here. So, but let's get stuck into the questions. So if you've got any questions, we've got some time to cover them off. So if I go to the first one, which was, I think I've got one in the Q&A as well, but sorry, in the chat, but let me go to the Q&A one first. So the first question is about, as a generation that don't like to communicate via calls, they use apps media. Mind you, I sometimes think this is about us as grown-ups as well. Don't always use the telephone anymore. But anyway, any advice that anybody can give around communicating in a different way that actually would be the best route to communicating with this generation of cohort coming through? It's just trying to reduce the likelihood that you're going to miss people, that they don't miss invites, content, etc.
Yeah, I can. Rachel, do you want to go? Rachel?
No, I suppose for us, we're probably not that far advanced in terms of what we're doing for communication. We use email probably in the first instance because that's how they've applied for the role. So typically candidates will engage with us with the email address that they've applied into because that's where they've been offered the job. But then if we can get them onto some of these platforms at an earlier point, that's probably the preferred method of communication, but you just need to get them there first. What we did find even when we were offering roles this year, typically we weren't we would call our candidates to offer them jobs. Loads of them don't answer. People don't listen to voicemails anymore. So we then did move on to WhatsApp and text, and we're texting candidates and asking them to call us back. But I think, to be honest, it's email in the first instance, but that typically is okay for graduates when that's how they've applied for the role.
And did they call you back when you left a message, Rachel?
Yeah, no, they would call us back if they
Oh,
thought they
that's
were
okay.
waiting on a job offer. Yeah.
Cool. Sorry,
I
Jenny.
think just to add to that, having a sort of journey on a piece of tech, or a clear pre-boarding journey that goes from day of offer to day of joining and then beyond, that makes sure that everything is in one place. They've got emails, voicemails, WhatsApp, phone calls. If everything can be in one place and all your newsletters can be sent out there, any learning can be provided on there, then you just have to send an email out to get them to log on, and then they know that they can go back to that kind of a piece of tech time and time again.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Having that kind of digital backbone that's their one-stop shop for all of that information, because sometimes that kind of multi-channel support can be, quite confusing. So absolutely that, and also kind of that can be using the same platform to also kind of have more chats and networking and have buddies. So literally everything that they need to know is literally within that kind of one platform area. So I would definitely kind of recommend kind of looking into those types of digital interventions, because they genuinely are scalable across your whole program, whatever kind of size cohort you're bringing in, from small to really big. And that's something that both ourselves and Amberjack can support with.
Right. Comment in the chat. I think this is a question, and I'm guessing by the question it's come from Nikki, that it's from somebody within sort of the careers education type landscape, and it's about links. It says to a playlist, but I assume that that means to content that they might be able to share with new cohorts, just to be able to support them, removing that uncertainty around communication skills, personal brand, etc. I don't know. Do you guys know of any tools that are out there for people to access generally?
Well, both 60 and us can create content to be shared, either via live workshops, webinars, or more playlist micro learning, which is what Ellie at 60 provide. So I think there's a range of different options depending on what might work. But I think providing that broad range is useful, and people can engage and interact with it in a way that best suits them.
And just one comment coming on from that, I do wonder actually if as AI develops in the development space, we're going to start to get some tools that students can interact with in a different way to learn and develop these skills as they come on board.
Yeah, I definitely, just to kind of go off the back of that, Stephen, 100%. There's some kind of new tech that's come out around kind of AI, being able to have conversations with AI avatars. So that's something that we're launching at the end of this month, actually, is actually being able to have a real conversation with an AI, like say practicing your communication skills, and then you kind of get your real-time feedback. And that's also something that kind of we're partnering with Amberjack to offer. And I think that type of thing with that real personalized interventions is going to be a game changer. And it's a bit scary sometimes. You think we can do this now, like in 6 months, a year, what's that going to look like? So 100%, I think that's a really interesting kind of comment.
It's going to be on demand, isn't it? I mean, that's the bit that strikes me, is because, as somebody who was brought up in the old style of training, you go on a course, you're given this skill, and you don't get around to using it for about 6 months, by which time you've forgotten it. Whereas now, actually, because of AI, on demand, you haven't got to wait for a coach or another course, and you can do it whenever you need it in bite-sized chunks.
Well, the AI coaching, I think, will be a big thing as well. Something that we're exploring. How do you coach early talent at scale? You need to use AI, really, because you can't have hundreds and hundreds of coaches for your cohorts.
Yeah, there's a limit of people. And Rachel, just one question, building on what you were saying around the sort of generation coming into the workforce, maybe have had different experiences, ties into some of that stuff we talked about with Bobby Duffy. What do you find works with your line managers, Rachel? Are you kind of undertaking a kind of an education piece with them just to kind of get them to think a bit differently around the people that are joining the workforce? Because my sense is that, even though people might like to whinge and, it's a bit of a, we always complain a bit, but there's something about a bit of a social shift in the way that young people come through education now into work that that's the reality, and we have to adapt to meet that.
Yeah, and that probably starts for us at the engagement for interviews and assessment centres. So typically the managers that will come along to any of our assessments will be the ones that will then manage the graduates or apprentices as they come through the organisation. Sometimes it's a bit of a sales pitch that we need to give for the way that we are assessing candidates, the way that we shortlist candidates, the way that we run our processes, because typically people like to do things the way that they always have, but that doesn't necessarily work for new generations. So what we have been doing for all of our assessments is having kind of 1 hour Teams calls with various types of managers that are going to be coming through to talk to them about why we're doing things the way that we're doing, but also the reasoning, or I suppose what the young people coming through actually need and actually want. So why we would choose to run a recruitment program the way that we would run it, because we know what type of people it'll attract and ultimately then what they will need from the business when they actually get into those positions. So it probably starts from that point, like way back at the beginning of campaigns, probably August time this year we'll start it for next year. But then equally from that point of offer, we then re-engage with the managers to let them know who's accepted positions, what our pre-boarding journey is going to look like, and what their role in that pre-boarding journey is as well. So there will be specific areas of the business that will look to set up kind of virtual chats with their graduates before they come in to give them a bit of an overview of the team, and actually just get some of the team members to come on and join so that they've met some people before day one. Equally, the in-person event that we organise in the business for all of the new graduates coming through, all of the line managers are invited to attend that, and we welcome all of their teams to come down as well so that the graduates have then met them in person. It's probably just still a bit of a battle that we have, if I'm being really honest. Some people will be really flexible and will understand that things have to change slightly, and some people won't. But it's a continual, I suppose it's just going to be a continual thing that we'll need to keep pushing against in the business, because we can share as much research as you guys have and as we find from the kind of wider market. But when it gets to kind of day to day in the organisation, there are people that think that they know what they want and what they need, but are probably less willing to adapt in terms of what the new graduate or the new apprentice might need in the organisation. So it is a challenge that probably everybody faces, I imagine, on this call.
And I think always has, yes.
Yeah.
Reminds me of my old recruiting
Yeah.
days. Yep, the business do need educating themselves. So yes, I suspect that will always be the case. We've got no more questions left, so that was a really great session. Thank you very much. I think it was really interesting, some of the comments you started with, Jenny, when you were saying that actually I think this summer could be interesting, because I've noticed 1 or 2 employers that have got more cyclical type of vacancies have come into the market. Now they've got a bit more certainty. So if there's last minute vacancies out there, people with offers, and we know from previous times in the cycle, don't we, that sometimes people accept multiple offers. Also, if they're a bit nervous, that sometimes offers unfortunately get pulled or delayed a bit. So we shall see. It'll be interesting to see how this summer plays out. So
Yeah.
cool. Jenny, if anybody wants to get hold of you, pick up any more questions, they can obviously come through the ISE. Is there any way to get hold of you directly? Is LinkedIn or something like that the best?
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn. Yeah, reach out to you at the ISE or LinkedIn. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Ellie, Jenny, Rachel, thank you very much. That's a really informative session and a topic I'm sure we will come back to. So as I said at the start, thank you very much to Amberjack. We couldn't put on this content without the support of yourselves. For everybody who registered for this webinar, you will get a link to the recording so you can play it back, but also share that link with others. And it will also shortly be available on the ISE website for you to access as well. Thank you very much all. Hope you all enjoy the rest of the day. See you all soon. Thanks again. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.